What if the man claiming to save your soul was planning your death? Two spiritual leaders, worshipped, followed, and feared, led thousands into the heart of darkness. One unleashed nerve gas in a subway. The other poisoned a town in the name of peace. Were they prophets or predators in disguise? Stay with me until the end. You won't see the world the same way again. Welcome to Red Dossier.
Before we move on to the next part, please give me a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening.
In the spring of 1995, morning commuters on Tokyo's subway system suddenly collapsed. Eyes burned, lungs failed, panic spread. 13 would die. Over 6,000 would suffer the aftermath of nerve gas exposure. The man behind it was not a soldier or a spy. He was Shoko Asahara, a self-proclaimed prophet, a blind former herbalist turned cult leader who believed he had been chosen to trigger the end of the world. A decade earlier, across the Pacific, another man stood before crowds in flowing robes, eyes half closed in meditative calm. His name was Bhagwan Shree Rajneesh, and to his followers, he was not just a teacher, but an awakened master. Under the Oregon sun, he built a city from scratch, Rajneeshpuram, complete with airports, restaurants, and armed guards. In 1984, more than 750 people in the nearby town of the Dallas would be poisoned with salmonella. The largest bioterror attack in American history. 2 men, 2 movements, 2 different continents, but both harnessed charisma and ideology to manipulate, control, and, when challenged, destroy. Shoko Asahara was born Shizuo Matsumoto in 1955 in rural Kumamoto, Japan. Partially blind and raised in poverty, he attended a school for the visually impaired, but quickly gained a reputation not for scholarship, but manipulation. After dabbling in Chinese medicine and fringe mysticism, he declared himself the reincarnation of multiple religious figures, including Christ and the Buddha, and founded Aum Shinrikyo in 1987. His doctrine was a toxic blend of doomsday prophecy, Hindu cosmology, and apocalyptic science fiction. Beneath its surface, the group stockpiled weapons, recruited engineers, and trained followers to kill without remorse, all under the illusion of spiritual purity. Bhagwan Shree Rajneesh, born in 1931 in Madhya Pradesh, India, was raised in a wealthy Jain family. From an early age, he was a sharp, provocative thinker who rejected religious orthodoxy. By the 1960s, he gained national fame for advocating sexual liberation, meditation, and the rejection of traditional morality. In 1981, he moved to the United States and founded Rajneeshpuram on a sprawling 64,000-acre ranch in Oregon. With more than $100 million raised from international devotees, his commune operated with business-like efficiency and the ideological zeal of a new spiritual empire. Psychologically, Asahara and Rajneesh diverged in method, but converged in ambition. Asahara was paranoid, authoritarian, and obsessed with destruction. He positioned himself as the sole savior in a decaying world, demanding total loyalty and obedience. Rajneesh was outwardly calm, witty, and seductive, often detached from the day-to-day operations, yet fully aware of the control he wielded. He didn't issue direct orders to harm, but he enabled, ignored, or rationalized when others did. Their reputations, though both tainted, carried different cultural shadows. In Japan, Asahara became the embodiment of cult terrorism, a man who weaponized belief and violated a society's deep trust in order and restraint. In contrast, Rajneesh, despite scandal and expulsion, remained a polarizing icon, his teachings repackaged as self-help spirituality, his crimes diluted by charisma and mystique. Both movements began with the promise of transformation, spiritual evolution, inner peace, personal power. Both ended with broken bodies and betrayed faith. And as the story unfolds, it becomes clear that neither man acted alone. Their empires were built on systems, on loyal lieutenants, on legal loopholes and psychological manipulation. What they built wasn't just cults. They built criminal machines disguised as enlightenment. Both Shoko Asahara and Bhagwan Shree Rajneesh mastered the art of control not through brute force alone, but through a psychological architecture that transformed ordinary individuals into obedient instruments of their ideology. They did not simply commit crimes, they engineered environments in which criminal behavior became a form of devotion. Understanding how they achieved this requires dissecting the ecosystems they built, from recruitment to ritual, from doctrine to execution. Asahara's cult, Aum Shinrikyo, functioned less like a religious organization and more like a totalitarian microstate. He recruited some of Japan's brightest minds, chemists, doctors, engineers, not for their faith, but for their utility. The group constructed laboratories capable of producing VX nerve agent and sarin gas, amassed millions of yen through property sales and donations, and maintained armed enclaves where dissidents were detained, tortured, or killed. By 1995, Aum operated a vast compound outside Tokyo equipped with military-grade technology. This was not mysticism, it was militarization under the guise of salvation. Rajneesh, meanwhile, built a different machine, more polished, more seductive, but no less dangerous. At Rajneeshpuram, his followers adopted new names, wore the same color robes, and surrendered personal property and legal identity to the commune. What began as a utopian experiment in alternative living soon morphed into a closed ecosystem with its own police force, airport, and political arm. Under the direction of Ma Anand Sheela, Rajneesh's fiercely loyal assistant, the community turned to immigration fraud, arson, illegal surveillance, and biological warfare to defend itself from perceived threats. In both cases, the leaders distanced themselves from direct violence. Asahara claimed his followers acted of their own volition, even as he prophesied the annihilation of non-believers. Rajneesh, after retreating into silence and later blaming Sheela for the criminal acts, maintained that he was a man of peace. Yet recorded speeches and internal memos show both men were aware, and often approving, of the actions taken in their names. The psychological hold they maintained was not accidental. Asahara framed obedience as spiritual purity. To doubt him was to side with darkness. Followers were isolated from families, subjected to sleep deprivation, and taught that martyrdom in service of Aum was the highest path. Rajneesh used more subtle tactics: flattery, exclusivity, sexual liberation. He offered personal awakening, but only if one dissolved into the collective. Both models preyed on existential insecurity. They promised clarity in a chaotic world, purpose for the disillusioned, and certainty in a time of fractured identity. The crimes committed under their banners were staggering in scale. In the Tokyo subway attack, 5 coordinated teams released sarin gas during rush hour, a plan designed to paralyze the city and provoke national collapse. 13 died, but experts later noted The death toll could have been in the thousands had the gas been deployed more efficiently. In Oregon, the Rajneesh's bioterror plot poisoned 751 people in a deliberate attempt to sway a local election. The operation involved cultivating salmonella in a secret lab and contaminating salad bars across town. The goal: incapacitate enough voters to ensure their candidates won. Financially, both groups operated like illicit enterprises. ARM amassed an estimated 1.2 billion yen, over 9 million USD at the time, through donations, extortion, and land seizures. Rajneeshpuram was funded by over $100 million in assets gathered through spiritual tourism, therapy sessions, and luxury workshops. Yet the money always flowed upward, toward the guru, the throne, the myth. Each leader believed they were untouchable. Asahara saw himself as the final prophet, destined to survive the apocalypse he would unleash. Rajneesh, shielded by legal ambiguity and international followers, believed his intellect placed him above law and consequence, but both made miscalculations. Asahara underestimated the resolve of Japanese law enforcement. Following the subway attack, coordinated raids uncovered chemical labs, weapons caches, and a paper trail leading directly to his command. Rajneesh overplayed his hand with U.S. immigration and biosecurity laws. After Sheila's abrupt resignation, federal investigations unearthed wiretaps, forged documents, and evidence of the poisoning. Rajneesh attempted to flee the country on a private jet, but was arrested and deported. Their downfalls were not sudden implosions, but slow exposures. The cracks had long been visible in the paranoia of their inner circles, the silencing of dissenters, the increasing separation from reality. Yet for years, both systems thrived, not despite the violence, but because of the illusion that the violence was sacred. As we move to the final chapter, we must ask, when a belief system justifies harm, where does faith end and fanaticism begin? And once that line is crossed, what does justice look like? Punishment of a person or dismantling of an entire idea? The final chapters in the lives of Shoko Asahara and Bhagwan Shree Rajneesh unfolded in drastically different settings, but echoed with a shared truth. Power built on spiritual deception does not dissolve quietly. It unravels with scars, confusion, and a lingering sense of disbelief that such violence could emerge from the language of peace. After his arrest, Shoko Asahara remained mostly silent during his trial. For years, he refused to answer questions or offer explanation, even as prosecutors laid out overwhelming evidence. Traces of sarin gas in his compounds, testimonies from former cult members, recordings of meetings where he directly authorized murder. In 2004, he was sentenced to death by hanging. The execution, however, did not take place until 2018, 14 years later, following prolonged legal battles and psychiatric evaluations to determine his mental fitness. Along with him, 13 other senior members of Aum Shinrikyo were also executed. Japan, a country known for its restraint and low violent crime rate, responded with rare unanimity. The public overwhelmingly supported the executions. For many, they were not just about punishment, but the closing of a wound that had festered for decades. Rajneesh's path diverged. In 1985, after his failed attempt to escape the United States, he was arrested and charged with immigration fraud. Facing a mountain of legal exposure, but unwilling to face trial, he accepted a plea deal. paid a fine of $400,000, and was deported. He would spend the remaining years of his life traveling between countries that refused him entry before returning to India in 1987. Renaming himself Osho, he resumed spiritual talks, but the mystique was fractured. His health deteriorated, and in 1990, he died at the age of 58. No criminal conviction ever tied him directly to the bioterror attack or the criminal operations at Rajneeshpuram. In the eyes of the law, he was never a terrorist, only a controversial figurehead of a community that went too far. Yet legacy is not determined by legal status alone. Today, Asahara's story is studied as a case of religious extremism turned domestic terrorism. Aum Shinrikyo was officially declared a terrorist organization by multiple countries and remains under surveillance under its rebranded name, Aleph. The sarin attack led to changes in Japanese counterterrorism policies, disaster response protocols, and public awareness of psychological cult manipulation. Asahara's face, once seen as that of a messianic leader by his followers, is now a symbol of manipulation, violence, and the destructive potential of absolute belief. Rajneesh, on the other hand, has undergone a posthumous reinvention. His books, rebranded under the name Osho, are widely available. Retreat centers bearing his philosophy flourish in Europe, South America, and Asia. The Netflix series Wild Wild Country reignited global curiosity, portraying him both as a visionary and a man surrounded by chaos. While critics warn against romanticizing his legacy, admirers point to his teachings on meditation, love, and consciousness. His crimes, or at least the crimes committed under his name, have become footnotes to his narrative, disputed, downplayed, or dismissed. When comparing the two, their danger lies not in the body count alone, but in the structure of their influence. Asahara commanded obedience through fear and divine threat. Rajneesh captivated through charm and pseudo-liberation. Asahara's violence was immediate and unambiguous. Rajneesh's was slower, concealed in administrative sabotage and moral ambiguity. Asahara operated like a general of spiritual warfare, Rajneesh more like a CEO of belief, delegating the dirty work while protecting the brand. Both men illustrate how religious authority can mask authoritarian control. One offered apocalypse, the other offered ecstasy. But in both cases, the cost was autonomy, sanity, and sometimes life itself. Their followers, engineers, lawyers, nurses, artists, were not inherently evil. They were misled by messages packaged in enlightenment and twisted into fanaticism. That is the most enduring danger of such leaders. Not that they act alone, but that they awaken something latent in the people who follow them. In the end, the stories of Shoko Asahara and Bhagwan Shree Rajneesh do more than expose two men. They reveal what happens when spirituality becomes a commodity, when leaders stop being questioned, and when doubt is treated as sin. They force us to confront our own vulnerability to ideology, to charisma, to the human need for meaning. And perhaps that is why their stories still matter, not as relics of the past, but as warnings for a future where the next prophet might speak softer, promise more, and do even greater harm in plain sight. So were they spiritual revolutionaries or master manipulators who turned faith into a weapon? What makes someone follow blindly? Belief, fear, or something deeper? Let me know what you think in the comments. Would you have seen through them? Or would you have followed too? If this story gripped you, hit that like button, subscribe for more true crime breakdowns, and share this with someone who needs to see how dark belief can get. Thanks for watching, and this is Red Dossier.